It's Ken Hughes. Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be a bit more philosophical than usual, so I thought I should have a pipe. What is it about a pipe that makes the person look like they're a philosopher? And glasses. I don't even need these glasses, but it just makes me look like an authority in terms of what I'm talking about. I want to talk about, as a cyber behavioralist, which is a field of study that's fascinating. We look at how people live their lives digitally and how that has an impact on their real world interactions. And so obviously, it's a young enough field of social science. But I've become fascinated by the future of Gen Alpha and Gen Beta, who are about to be born in 2025 and onwards, and what they're going to be like as an employee in terms of talent, but also in terms of society. And there's a couple of things that are happening technologically that we're not talking about. So we're talking about AI and we're talking about the technology, we're all very excited. But the drawbacks to what this technology is doing to the human mind in terms of creativity and problem solving, attention spans, we really need to be talking about this. So this video today is just about an opening of conversation and debate around that. So I was on a tram recently looking at the little baby in a stroller in front of me. And I've come up with this wonderful word that I'm calling Stroller Scrollers. These are the children that are handed an iPhone or a phone aged 1. And you see them everywhere. You see them in airports and train stations. You see them on streets. You see them in shopping malls. These kids who are probably 12 to 24 months being handed their parents' iPhone to kind of as a digital pacifier to keep them quiet. And instantly you can see how, of course, intuitive and rewarding the interface is. And so you have a kid who's 12, 14 months able to scroll through Reels, scroll through YouTube Kids. And I watched this kid have a tantrum, a full meltdown on the tram, screaming for his mum's phone. And when he got the phone, he was happy. And then 10 minutes later, when she tried to take the phone off him to get off the tram, again, the same thing, tantrum, huge tantrum. So already the hard wiring of addiction is there in terms of having the pleasurable thing taken away from you. And I started thinking about these stroller scrollers and what they would become, because obviously it's not new. You know, as Gen X, we were the Commodore 64 kids, and then the millennials were the PS4 kids, and the Gen Z were the iPad kids, where you saw kids at a restaurant table or in a stroller with their iPad. But the interesting thing about the iPad was, again, it had just basic stuff on it, maybe some cartoons. And that was no different to the Saturday mornings I spent as a kid. You know, you ran to see the Saturday morning cartoons. They were only on from, let's say, 9 till 12. Thinking back on it, no wonder my parents always closed their door on a Saturday morning. It's the only free time they had to themselves all week. And there's nothing wrong with that. And so currently, the pediatricians all over the world, in Europe and in America, all agree on screen times, like healthy screen times for kids. And they're really low. And so like they recommend 0 screen time under 2 years of age. And then between 2 and 5, you're supposed to have 1 hour of screen time a day. And that's supposed to be supervised by a parent. And I'm thinking, okay, well, those people clearly had never had kids, because, you know, the digital screen-based babysitter has always been a thing, a coping mechanism for parents. And so you mightn't agree with the 1 hour screen time, but we've certainly gone too far in terms of giving these stroller scrollers so much digital access. And we're breeding a problem into society. And the scientific studies are already out. I mean, there's so many studies, if you go looking for them, that will show you the physical health implications of screens, you know, all the neck pain as teenagers. You have all the mental health issues of anxiety, loneliness, depression, particularly evident in teenage girls regarding social media. And so there are huge implications to mental health, physical health of these devices. And the main thing you got to remember is that you wouldn't hand a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old a cigarette in a stroller. And if you did, you certainly wouldn't hand them one every day. You'd know that was wrong. If you saw a kid smoking away there in their stroller with my pipe, imagine a little 2-year-old having a pipe. You know, you'd have a comment to say maybe to the parents. You certainly would think to yourself, whoa, that's a bit weird. But yet that's what we're doing every day to our kids. We're giving them a highly addictive thing into their hands at a time when their brain isn't developing. So there's a reason that alcohol is sold to over 21s or 18s, a reason that prescription drugs or legalized drugs in countries that have them aren't sold to under 18s. There's a reason gambling can't be accessed by those under 18. All those reasons are there is to protect our children, to protect our teenagers against likely addiction. And so as your brain is developing, it's not fully formed from a neurological perspective until you're 25. And one of the last areas to form is actually your prefrontal cortex, this piece to the front. And that's responsible for self-regulation, for decision-making, for attention spans and focus. And so that's why kids have tantrums and teenagers think they're right all the time. It's still developing. Now imagine, because they can't self-regulate, these devices that we hand them are highly addictive, and the apps that they're using are the algorithms are designed, of course, to keep you on reels, keep you scrolling. And so again, the scientific studies have already shown us that excessive video game use is addictive and forms the brain as the child's brain is developing, can form likely addictions later on. Now, reels are way more addictive than video games. And so even as adults, we're having difficulty weaning ourselves off our phones. What are we thinking? Giving kids 1, 2, 3, these devices that as their brains are forming, they're being wired, or they have no self-regulation, so they can't stop. And inherently there are stopping moments that we have as humans. For instance, if you keep eating, you eventually feel full. So that's your body saying, okay, don't eat anymore. And if you try and eat anymore, you're just going to vomit it back up. Same with alcohol. If you take too much alcohol, your body will say, no, don't like this, and will get rid of it. Now, from an addiction point of view, the dopamine that you're getting, which is the second area of the brain I want to talk about, the dopamine pleasure pathway, that's the reward center of the brain. And every single time you get a little ding or a new cartoon or a new reel and there's a little drip of dopamine, the brain, of course, is being developed around this dopamine need. And what do we think is going to happen later on in life when these people are 18 and 28 and 38? They're going to need that high level of dopamine that they've been used to. Where are they going to get that from? Alcohol, sex, drugs, other forms of addiction. And so we're breeding an entirely addictive brain. And you can say, what's the harm of giving a kid, a phone in the stroller to keep them quiet for a little bit? Actually, the harm is huge, as much as you would hand them a cigarette. And so we have to have a think about, well, how are we going to regulate this? Because we have the regulations in place. Cigarette companies have to put their warnings on their packs. Alcohol companies have to put their warnings on the packs. And the smartphone companies and the mobile phone operators and the social media owners, it's very much tick box in terms of corporate social responsibility. I don't really see anyone taking full responsibility for this. We're all kind of collectively asleep at the wheel here in society, as parents, as educators. And there are movements like in Silicon Valley, the people who actually design these devices and design the apps that we're using, they themselves send their children to schools that have a zero screen policy. Like they themselves understand the problem. And all the schools in Silicon Valley have no phones, no iPads, no computers in the school. In fact, there's a law going through Irish legislation at the moment trying to get all primary schools to ban screens and phones from the buildings. And so there's the beginning of some kind of feel, but if the people who are designing the devices know how dangerous they are, how come we're not having this conversation? I think these screens and handing a stroller scroller a screen at that age, it is the smoking of our times. In the 1920s, the smoking companies knew that they were causing lung cancer and causing deaths, and they buried those reports all into the 30s, 40s, 50s. It wasn't until the 1960s when the US Surgeon General came out and said smoking is bad for you. And so we are at that same place, I think, with digital right now. We know it's bad. And where is society heading? We're heading to that. You remember the 2008 Pixar movie, WALL-E? This idea that we destroy the planet and then we go all live in spaceships and big, massive hover chairs, we become overweight and we just interact digitally. We have no human interaction. It's all, we're heading there. We're heading there. Those stroller scrollers, I look at them, age 1 or 2, and just completely, zoned out, just looking at their device. If we're doing that to them age 1 and 2, and they're going to grow up, by the way, in an AI, metaverse-fueled world, virtual reality, augmented reality. Now, I'm not anti-progress. It's going to be amazing. But we have to acknowledge the negative effect that these devices have on our children, from anxiety, loneliness, depression, lower attention spans, lower ability to self-regulate, huge addiction issues. And these are all relevant things that are happening. And we have to have a conversation around them and think about, well, what can we do? I finished with one story. And usually, by the way, I finish these videos with, here's 5 things you can do in your business to, use stroller scrollers. And I'm not going to do that because I may become part of the problem. The problem here is that consumers are getting younger and younger, and we as capitalist brand owners are trying to force that consumer moment earlier and earlier. Like the first thing I bought maybe was probably a cassette or a vinyl when I was age 12 or 13. The next generation behind me, the millennials, bought a CD when they were kind of aged maybe 11 or 12. The next generation behind me, Gen Z, they bought maybe a streaming service or a digital song. Behind me again, then Gen Alpha, they spent their money on a Fortnite skin, virtual product in a virtual environment, virtual currency. What would Gen Alpha and Gen Beta be? These kids in the strollers, age 1 or 2, were scrolling away. We're trying to get them earlier and earlier as customers, trying to influence them, and they're going to grow up in this world of more technology. So we have a duty of care, obviously, to protect our kids and to think about, well, how can we protect them in this deeper digital immersive society going forward. As I said, one last story. My son, when he was 14, he's 18 now. When he was 14, he was caught stealing whiskey from the liquor cabinet. It's normal 14-year-old behavior. And as part of the punishment that had to come his way, I took his phone from him for 4 weeks. So no smartphone for 4 weeks. And I gave him, as he called, Nokia Blokia instead, just to be able to text and to stay in touch with parents. And so After about a week or two, the whole thing backfired because my son was much happier on his Nokia. And he said to me, I wish all my friends just had Nokias. I wish I grew up in the Nokia time where you could just text people and keep in contact. I don't like all these apps. So we're kind of getting maybe to the end of this where maybe it's going to be a cycle and maybe these stroller scrollers are going to grow up with less attention spans. If you talk to any classroom teacher, they'll tell you the attention span of the classroom has taken a nosedive in the last 15 years. And so maybe they're going to grow up and they're going to be angry and they're going to be upset that all this technology is driving their lives. And maybe there will be a full circle. But I think certainly from brands and business owner perspective, from regulators, from educators, we have to take responsibility and control and certainly stop handing our children these devices in their strollers. What it means for their future ability to problem solve, creativity, play games, use your imagination, look out the window. The idea of just descending into a digital reality age 1, 2, it is a very, very scary place. And on that note, I'm off to smoke, to contemplate, and to not use screens. Till next time, I'm Ken Hughes.